set of tools, do you? Furniture? I got some fine leather furniture.
Well, you know, we're just kind of passing through ourselves. I don't know if we could use any furniture. I didn't see much of a future in driving a tractor, but that's kind of what I'm still doing half the time. Me and Sammy work for Mr. Gill out here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we're just about through for the year, though. We try and play music in the meantime.
You play some music? Yeah.
We try, yeah. Where'd you bring that Buick in here from, buddy?
Alabama. Mom and Dad had a cotton farm down there, and shoot, I hit the road just as soon as I turned 16. You know what that's like.
I hear that. I grew up on a cotton farm down in South Arkansas. Couldn't wait to get off that tractor.
And on the road.
You got that right. On the road. What's the next step, right?
I don't know. I could just do one thing for myself, make my mark,
And then what?
And I'd go home. Go home.
Welcome to the United State Fair and Pioneer Village. We're glad to have you here today. My name's Gary Emsweller. I'm the manager, superintendent, whatever you want to call me here at Pioneer Village. My job is to attempt to keep about 300 volunteers focused and doing what they're supposed to be doing. Our volunteers come from all over the United States and around the world, right here in Pioneer Village. So it's a very unique place, an iconic place to learn about agriculture and Indiana agricultural history. So it's a great place to be here, and we're glad to have all of you here today. Just a real quick background. Many years ago, 1960, our founding person, Maury Williamson, established Pioneer Village. He would have no idea today what this place is like and having events like we're having here today. So it's an honor to be part of this process, and we're glad you're all here. One of the things, and I've mentioned the volunteers. The volunteers in Pioneer Village bring this place to life. And like I said, they've been here for 20, 30 years. We've got second, third, fourth generation people living in Pioneer Village and making it is what it is today. These people become family. We are family, and it's good to see we're bringing one of our family members home today. So we're glad to have Mike Pence with us today. I say that because he's had dinners at our dinner table. He was here as a congressman. He was here as a governor. He was here as a vice president. He's now here as a candidate for president of the United States in 2024. And we got documented evidence that he is a family person, because we got pictures of him washing dishes in the kitchen after dinner. So, but more importantly, and we might get him to wash dishes today, but one of the things I was worried about is I don't know that he brought his bib overalls today.
No, I did not.
So, I want to make sure they fit you okay. They look like they might. Anyway, it's our extreme privilege and honor to introduce Mike Pence, and we're just glad you're here. And here, I'll take him. We're glad to have you here. We appreciate you coming to Pioneer Village, and you're always welcome to come back. Good seeing you. Thank you.
How about another round of applause for the mayor of Pioneer Village, Gary Emsweller, and all the great volunteers here. Gary, thank you. Thank you for the bib overalls. They were XXL, so I'm sure they'll fit fine. And we appreciate you very much. And let me just say, it is great to be back home again, and great to be at the great Indiana State Fair, everybody. What a beautiful day. I want to thank you all for coming out. And let me begin by saying I am here as a fellow Hoosier. Karen and I raised our family here. I was born and raised in southern Indiana. The privilege of representing this state in the Congress. Great privilege of serving as your governor. And 4 years as Vice President of the United States. But 2 years ago, when we found ourselves out of work, there was never any doubt we were going back home again to Indiana, and we moved back home and live not too far from here. I tell people, Gary, that we got 5 acres and a pond. I got a John Deere riding mower, Ford Ranger, and I want to thank everybody for giving us such a warm welcome back home to Indiana. But I came here today to talk about an issue that's bearing upon the families of Indiana and families all across this country. But I stand before you today because I'm Mike Pence, and I'm running for President of the United States of America. You know, we gathered a very difficult time in the life of our nation. And I don't speak now about the news events that seem to continuously swirl around us. I talk about an issue that I hear the most about as I travel all across this country. And that is the rising cost of living under the failed policies of the Biden administration. Inflation is out of control in this country. And I want to speak to you today not just about the problem, but about solutions. As last week I became the first Republican candidate for president to actually lay out a plan for how we tackle inflation and put our nation back on a path not only of fiscal solvency, but affordability for American families. The truth is, Karen and I made this decision to step into this race because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think President Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. But the economic policies of the Biden administration literally have turned the American dream into a pipe dream. Now, there's a lot of happy talk in Washington these days about Bidenomics, and about how inflation is down this year from what it was the year before. But I think you all in this room know that inflation is actually up more than 16% since the day I left office as your vice president. And the truth is, that turns out to be a 16% pay cut for every working family in this country, and I hear about it everywhere I go. I mean, from the very outset of the Biden administration, they've enacted policies that have literally lit the pilot light on the worst inflation in 40 years. I mean, from the very beginning, President Biden and that Democrat majority in Congress went on a $10 trillion spending spree. $2 trillion, all in the name of COVID, which totally unnecessary COVID spending. I mean, they've spent in those first 2 years more than the economies of Japan, Germany, and Australia combined. And I stand before you today, and our national debt is the size of our nation's economy for the first time since the end of World War II. But the impact on families is what I hear the most about. Not just the increased cost of groceries, which I put up on a panel beside me here, but it's worth noting. I mean, gas prices that shot back up at their most rapid rate last week, most rapid rate in over a year, are still 60% higher than the day we left office. Ground beef is up 20%, chicken breast 29%, potatoes are up 31%. I don't have to tell anybody heading out to Kroger what these numbers are, but for some people in the national media, it's important for them to understand what American families are dealing with. Bread is up 25% and eggs are up 51%. I was actually campaigning in New Hampshire not long ago, and a wonderful restaurant owner, he and his wife started the restaurant 25 years ago, and now they have 30 employees. But he said that cost of eggs had caused him to lay people off at his restaurant because eggs cost 51% more than they did just 2 years ago. But as I said, we all know the reasons for it. It's runaway spending. It's the policies that have literally crowded out the American consumer. And we saw real evidence of it yesterday with what are called a credit rating agency in New York City. You know, I couldn't be more proud to have been governor of the great state of Indiana, a state that works, a state that shows you can cut taxes and balance budgets and grow the economy and achieve record employment. We did it together. But what we also do in Indiana is we have what's called a AAA bond rating, okay, which lowers the cost of borrowing for the state of Indiana for bond issues for infrastructure projects. But a AAA bond rating means that independent reviewers in the financial markets out of New York City look at your state budget and say you got your fiscal house in order, right? Well, believe it or not, one of the leading credit rating agencies in the world yesterday downgraded the United States credit rating. They haven't downgraded our credit rating since 2011, which happened to be the time when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. I mean, men and women, I will tell you, we all know that inflation is a man-made problem, and that man's name is Joe Biden. And we don't have to live like this anymore. And I believe that the next president of the United States needs to make tackling inflation and reducing the burden of inflation on working families their #1 economic priority. Inflation today is not only crushing family budgets, but it's crushing the life out of small businesses around the country today and costing jobs. So let me just say to friends in the room, the first step toward ending inflation is to do our part in the next 18 months to make sure that Joe Biden is never reelected President of the United States of America. We need a change. And the cost of this is very real. I will tell you, I was up in Hobart, Indiana not long ago. I was at a gas station. I was talking to some people there about the rising cost of gasoline. As I mentioned, up 60% still from the day we left office. And I saw a woman pull into the pump. She had a couple of young kids in the back seat. And I just asked her, I said, how you doing with high gas prices? And she said, we're making out okay. She said, my husband and I only have to go to the food bank in town twice a week now. And I said, are you out of work? And she said, no, my husband's got a job. I'm home with the kids. But she said, you know, we've only got so much in our family budget. When gasoline prices go up this much, it comes out of the grocery budget. And so they were going to the food bank twice a week. And then she bragged about how generous the people at the food bank were, which no surprise to me in Indiana. But I mean, the truth is that 2 out of 3 American families will tell you that they're living paycheck to paycheck. This is real. I mean, whatever the politicians in the national media are talking about on any given day, this is what I hear about from people across this state and across this nation. And I promise you, if you give me the privilege of being the President of the United States of America, we're going to end inflation in America and get this economy growing again. So help me God. I basically have a 4-step program I'll roll through real quick, and then I'll get back to visiting with all of you, and I got to poke around a little bit more at the State Fair. First off, step 1 is end runaway spending in Washington, D.C. You know, I think the American people are starting to figure out that the more Washington borrows, the more inflation rises. And it's true. I mean, Washington has spent too much for decades, frankly, under Republicans and Democrats. But it's never been worse than under Joe Biden. If I'm president, we're going to end deficit spending. We're going to put America back on a path to a balanced budget. We're going to repeal more than $3 trillion in new spending appropriated by this administration. We're going to end that giveaway to graduate students that his student loan giveaway is, putting a burden on working families. And frankly, we're going to shut down the EPA once and for all. We're going to lift the burden of government off businesses and families. So it starts off with getting spending under control. It also means you got to freeze non-defense spending in this country. Now, I will tell you, I'm the proud father of a captain in the United States Marine Corps, my son Michael. And some of you around here that have known me for many years, you might be shocked to know that guy you met as a little boy here at the State Fair is now 31 years old, the father of 2. He's a fighter pilot, and he's actually headed to Top Gun next month. And I'll also tell you, I'm proud to say one of my unworthy son-in-laws is a fighter pilot in the United States Navy. So when I talk to you about defense spending, it comes from the heart. And I know so many Hoosier families that have themselves served and have family members that are serving today. And I want to tell you, we're going to freeze non-defense spending. We're going to get runaway spending under control so we can give our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force the resources they need to defend this nation. I promise you. And to get spending under control, I'm going to be one of the few candidates you hear from that says that it's also time to have a conversation. A conversation about common sense reforms to the real drivers of federal spending. And that, frankly, is entitlements, Social Security and Medicare. Now, let me tell all of you, if you're in retirement today, we're going to keep the promises to you. Nothing's going to change in Social Security and Medicare. And frankly, if you're 40 years or older, nothing's going to change for you either. I don't believe in changing the deal halfway down the road on people. But for Americans under the age of 40, like these 2 fellows down on the front row, I'd like to have a conversation. I think we can transform these New Deal programs into a better deal. We can preserve them for future generations, and we can prevent America from a debt crisis facing your generation, and we can set ourselves on a path of fiscal integrity that will reduce inflation today for working families, and I promise you I'm going to fight for it. So number 1 is fiscal responsibility. Number 2 is a little more obscure, but it's just as important. The Federal Reserve sets the interest rates in America. But since 2020, the Fed has actually printed $5 trillion in American currency. And you all need to understand what most of you do, that every new dollar in circulation decreases the value of your dollar in your bank account. It just does. It's basic economics. So to fight inflation, we got to stop printing money in Washington, D.C. And I truly do believe, if I've served as President of the United States, we're going to make it job one and job one only for the Federal Reserve to protect the integrity of the dollar, and we're going to leave the command of full employment to our President and our Congress to make happen, okay? It's called ending the dual mandate for the Fed, because literally for decades the Fed gets up every day and on one hand, they're trying to protect the dollar against inflation. On the other hand, they're trying to promote full employment. And that's why you see the ups and the downs in interest rates and printing money. I think you ought to look to the White House and to the Congress for policies that get the economy moving again. Hold them accountable and tell the Fed, you know what, how about you just protect the dollars in my bank account, okay? And frankly, beyond that, we're also going to appoint people to the Federal Reserve Board that'll bring real reform to the Fed. I'm going to nominate candidates to the Fed in the mold of Judy Shelton, who is a strong conservative and one of the strongest critics of the Fed in America today. Step 3, we're going to bring manufacturing back to the United States of America and lower the cost of creating goods in our supply chain. You know, in the first 3 years of our administration, with the tax cuts we passed, the regulations we rolled back, we saw 12,000 new factories come back to this country and reopen. I mean, we can reshore these jobs with the right policies, which will also, as the economy continues to grow, will continue to tackle this inflation. We can rebuild American manufacturing first by making the Trump-Pence tax cuts permanent. And you may not know, they're actually scheduled to go away in 2025. But as your president, with a Republican majority in the Congress, we're going to make those tax cuts permanent. And as the Biden administration, even in the last week, is continuing to launch an avalanche of regulations on the American people, I promise you, we're not just going to cut 2 regulations for every regulation on the book. We're going to go 3 to 1 under a Pence administration. We're going to roll back red tape and get this economy moving again. And finally, step 4. So you got fiscal responsibility, you got reform the Fed, you got bringing jobs back home. Step 4 is we're going to unleash American energy and lower the cost of energy to every family and every American business. I mean, we're going to end Joe Biden's war on American energy. And it's been a war, folks. I mean, literally, after our administration that opened up the Keystone Dakota pipelines for approval. We opened up the Alaska National Wildlife Region for responsible development. We opened up federal lands. We became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 70 years. We achieved energy independence, and Joe Biden on day 1 set America back on a path to energy dependence. I mean, literally shut down those pipelines, offline vast areas of federal lands, including in Alaska. And literally their regulations have discouraged investment in American development. And it's had a real impact, not just at the pump. But remember, you know, I grew up in a gas station family, so I know what it is seeing cost of gasoline going up at the pump. But everybody here in Indiana knows that the cost of the fuel going into that truck that brings those goods to your grocery store also drives up inflation as well. There is no more effective way to tackle inflation than unleashing American energy, and we'll do it under a Pence administration. So those are the 4 policies. Fiscal responsibility, reform the Fed, get them back to their basic knitting, bring jobs back to America to lower the cost of the supply chain, and unleash American energy. And I know it'll work, because it worked before. I mean, in those first 3 years of our administration, putting those same policies into practice, we saw 7 million good-paying jobs created. Manufacturing came roaring back. Unemployment achieved record low, its lowest rate in 50 years, and the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. The American dream was working for every American as never before. And maybe most meaningful to me of all, 10 million Americans were lifted off welfare into work in those first 3 years. America was booming, and it's going to boom again. I mean, I'll tell you, as I stand before you today, I'm more optimistic than ever before. Because as I've traveled around this country, and Karen and I come back home and lay our head on our pillow here in Indiana, I see a resolve among the American people like I've never seen. You know, I was there in the Congress of the United States the first time we retired Nancy Pelosi in 2010, and I couldn't be more glad to see they retired Nancy Pelosi once and for all. I know the last election was a little disappointment to some people around the country, but not so much here in Indiana. And not so much everywhere that people were focused on the future. I mean, the truth is, I really do believe when you look at those midterm elections, you can see that the men and women that were standing for office on the Republican line who were focused on the real challenges facing the American people and brought real solutions to those challenges did very well. Frankly, candidates that were focused on the past or relitigating the past didn't fare quite as well. And so I promise you, as I go forward in this campaign, we're going to focus on the issues you and your family are dealing with. That's why the first issue we laid out policies on was inflation, because I know the burden that this is placing on working families and small businesses and family farms. And as we go down the road, we're going to keep talking about what the American people are talking about. Not what's fashionable for the day, not what's the news of the day. We're going to talk about what's most important every day, and that is the security and prosperity of the American people. I promise you. You know, we just need the right leadership. I believe different times call for different leadership. I believe the time has come for new leadership in the Republican Party and new leadership in the White House, and I'm going to work every day to continue to make Indiana proud. I'm going to work my heart out to earn the support of people all across this country. And I have faith that the best days are ahead, because I have faith in the American people, and I have that other kind of faith. You know, for all my years as vice president, and as your governor and as a congressman, I got to be honest with you, my opinion of the federal government did not go up. But my opinion of the American people went up every day. You know, I traveled overseas every year for 10 years when I was in Congress to visit soldiers that went downrange to defend this country. I've been with business owners who put everything on the line just to keep people working every day. I've been where the wind blows and beats against the house. I've been where hurricanes and tornadoes and wildfires rolled through, and even where tragedy of human origins occurred. And I never fail to be inspired by the goodness and the generosity and the courage of the American people. You know, the truth is, this is a great nation. The American people are the most idealistic, innovative, hardworking, creative, and faith-filled people the world has ever known. We just need government as good as our people, and I intend to get it for us. So I have faith in all of you. And finally, I have faith that God is not done with America yet, and that if we'll turn our hearts back to Him, if we'll do as the old book says, that if His people who are called by His name will humble themselves and pray and turn, I know in my heart of hearts, just as He's done through much more challenging times than families are facing today, just like it says, He'll hear from heaven and He'll heal this land, this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm Mike Pence. I'm running for President of the United States, and I ask for your support. God bless you all.